Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Ryan Day, the Ohio State Buckeyes go on the road. One of the more hostile environments you'll see in all of college football. They make a statement against Penn State. Two things that jump out to me about this football game. One, you go on the road, hostile environment, you immediately go down 10-0. Will Howard throws a brutal pick six, and it's really nice to see this team kind of, battle back, not really flinch when that adversity struck. I think more importantly, I got to give Ryan Day so much credit for how he's designed this Ohio State offense. Like, look, it looks different than years past under Ryan Day. We just had the same conversation with Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley refuses to adapt on the offensive side of the football. He's going to try to run that same offense he ran with Baker, with Caleb Williams. Look, Ryan Day knows that he doesn't have a CJ Stroud back there at quarterback. You have to run this offense a little bit differently with Will Howard at the quarterback spot. You're seeing him design an offense that I think fits Will Howard beautifully. I thought they game planned extremely well against a really good Penn State defense. You kind of are seeing the identity for this Ohio State team, and that is, hey, we're going to run the football a lot and play really good defense. And if we can do those things, we're going to be a really hard team to beat. And you look at the landscape of college football, like Oregon and Ohio State, I think, are kind of separating themselves as the two best teams in the country. I go watch Georgia and say, that don't look like one of the best teams in the country. You just beat Penn State. We kind of said this even after the loss against Oregon. Like, Ohio State played a really good football game. A few plays didn't go their way. They lose that game. Make no mistake about it. Ohio State and Oregon are, in my opinion, clearing away the best two teams in all of college football. Let's get into some of the bigger takeaways. And Dill, you noted it before we went live. I still think there's another gear for this Ohio State team, specifically on the defensive side of the football. We'll get into that. Now, before we do, and as always, to the Ohio State fans, you all know I picked Penn State to win this game. I was nervous about Ohio State holding up in pass, bro. Y'all can let it fly in the comment section. I certainly deserve it. I've looked, Dill, as a Michigan fan, as a Big Ten fan, I've learned well enough not to pick against Ohio State when they go play Penn State. So y'all can let me have in the comment section. Of course, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, Dill. I'll give you the T-box. And look, I want to start on the offensive side of the football. It's not groundbreaking numbers that Ohio State put up on offense. That being said, that version of the Ohio State offense, one, looked massively different from 7 days ago when we watched that team against Nebraska. Biggest takeaways from this Ohio State offense after Penn State game?
Well, the one thing is I think they finally got Will Howard's legs much more involved in that football game. That's something I think as an Ohio State fan you would have wanted to see, especially given some of the questions. And you talk about adapting, like they do have some issues on that offensive line. You still saw a couple of them. Obviously, Penn State was able to get home a couple of times. So they still have their problems on the offensive line. But you look, when they use Will Howard the way they were using him and stress those defensive ends, make them read plays and slow them down, I think that offense can be really, really effective both in the air and in the ground. Because you look, I think they were able to use that ground attack, especially their ability to get to the perimeter with those speed options, really effectively to set up some big plays. I think there was one point in the third quarter in a sequence, they hit it with a speed option. Yeah. We get that cornerback kind of thinking he's got to play that run. And then they go pop one to Jeremiah Smith that I know wasn't caught. But, I mean, that's a big play touchdown. That was kind of an easy one.
Jeremiah Smith makes that play 99 times. I think he lost the ball. He looked like he just didn't track the ball the right way. Not really sure what happened there. But and you're right. Like, it doesn't get much better than Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, like, scheming it up and kind of sequencing plays to really confuse defenses. Those are two of the best minds on the offense. It's almost unfair that they're both running the same offense. Dill, on the Will Howard comment, we kind of said this heading into 2024. We thought there'd probably be 3 games where they would run Will Howard. Like the rest of the games, you're going to be able to win and not have to run Will Howard. You probably don't want to run Will Howard 20 times in a game when you're playing Nebraska. That being said, it might only be 2 games now. Like we thought it was Oregon and Penn State, Michigan. I don't even know if you're going to need to run Will Howard against Michigan to get that win. You're going to see Ohio State run Will Howard when the moments are the biggest. And this was obviously a huge game for both programs. They ran Will Howard. I don't think you're going to see Will Howard run a ton the rest of the month, maybe against Indiana. We'll kind of see about that. I think secondly, they'll shout out to the offensive line. Yeah, Donovan Jackson struggled at left tackle. You could tell that was his first time, and he was going up against one of the, if not the best edge rusher in the country, in Abdul Carter. We kind of knew there'd be some struggles. They did a decent job for the most part, chipping with some tight ends, helping with some running backs. But I thought the rest of the offensive line was actually pretty dang good.
They
Like
played some good physical football.
yeah,
That's kind of what popped off to me is, I mean, they were able to run the ball in between the tackles. And again, I think their variability in the run game in
yeah,
slowing those linebackers down, especially and kind of getting them in some bad fits at times, certainly helped out. But you saw them moving guys off the line of scrimmage. I thought the interior played well. I mean, Tegra Shabola, really, really good game from him. And Seth McLaughlin, as much as people wanted to rip on him when he came over because of the snaps in that Alabama or that Rose Bowl game, I should say, he's played really good for Ohio State. So you look, again, I think pass pro will probably always be a certain level of an issue for Ohio State at this point when you lose a first round pick at that left tackle spot
yeah.
and then you lose his backup. I mean, it's hard to avoid kind of having it be a bit of a problem. But again, I think when they play that way, if they can run the ball the way they ran it and be physical on the interior, I think they're a good enough offensive line to be able to make this unit
Yeah,
run.
it's going to look different. Like, it's not going to be CJ Stroud throwing the football 50 times per game. And they're probably not going to put up the amount of points that they used to put up with CJ Stroud under center. But it's still an offense that, like, control the time possession and play really good defense. You can win a national championship the way Ohio State played. Heck, that was national championship caliber football. You take away the pick six. I mean, this is a 20-6 win for Ohio State on the road against a legitimate top 5 team in the country. Varying the run games, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly knew this Penn State defense is super vertical. Like, they want to get really aggressive and shoot some gaps. They did a lot of misdirection. They did a lot of perimeter stuff to kind of combat that, which I think certainly helped. Still, I mean, the two biggest question marks we had is Ohio State going to avoid negative plays, which they did a pretty good job of, and can they run the football? They did both of those at an extremely high level, and that Ohio State offense, it looked really dang good. Now, the
No,
Ohio State
I want to stick on their ability. I still think there's like that explosive ability that people aren't going to take away from this game. That I really think that that'd be a mistake, frankly, for teams across the country. Because you look, Carnell Tate, I mean, that route that he used to get open on the play that they
yeah,
misfired on him, really nasty route. Jeremiah Smith, obviously really good, and Emeka Buka, just a really savvy player. I mean, you see his ability to kind of get across the field on that over out, get open, make that touchdown. Like, they're real. I don't think it's going to be like throwing the ball 40 times a game kind of stats, but I think there's that ability to hit those big plays. And if they start clicking on those more consistently, I think this Ohio State team on
yeah,
offense can be like a real
I'd like to see them go to more play action. I think they only won play action 6 dropbacks in this football game. Will Howard was 5 of 6 for 66 yards. Like, if you can run the football like that with Judkins and Travion Henderson, go to a little bit more play action. I think it's going to be effective. You're going to be able to hit some explosive
especially because the secondary players need to be involved when you run it the way they're running, and they can attack the middle, they can attack the boundaries.
yeah.
In their running backs, like, you need to get to them quickly because if they get ahead of steam, both of them are so explosively. I do think secondary players need to be involved in run support pretty heavily, more so than a lot of teams. Like, again, there's an avenue, I think, to open up some explosiveness in this Ohio State team that we really haven't seen aside from a little bit through the run game and get really,
Yeah.
really dangerous.
And there might be like an element of you'll see that more when they need. I think there's that, and I'm not necessarily supporting it, but it was like, hey, Penn State can't move the football against this team. And so it's like, do we need to take that many risks dropping back? And like, I mean, the worst case scenario there was like a strip sack Donovan Jackson gives up to Abdul Carter, gives Penn State a short field. I do think Ohio State went a little bit more to, hey, let's make sure we're not making any disasters on the offensive side of the football, lean on our defense to put this game away. That's kind of what they did, and it worked. This Ohio State defense, really bad game against Oregon, right? This, in my opinion, it's the most talented defense you see in the country. And some Georgia fans, hopefully you're not listening 9 minutes into this episode. I believe it. I mean, it's NFL talent at almost every single starting position for Ohio State. And quite frankly, NFL talent in the two deep as well. I still think there's another gear for Ohio State to reach on defense in terms of the fingerprint Ohio State's defense can leave on a football game. Look, I mean, Penn State scored 13 points in this football game, 7 of which came off a pick six. They didn't score an offensive touchdown. They kicked 2 field goals, only had 270 yards of offense. Katron Allen, 2.3 yards per carry. Nick Singleton, 2.5 yards per carry. Dominant smothering defense. I still think there's an avenue for Ohio State to create some more game-changing plays on the defensive side of the football with how talented they are. And if they can take that step, I think that makes this Ohio State team just that much more dangerous heading into the college football playoffs.
Once again, they did give up a couple of drives, right? I mean, I know they're really tough in the red zone, so you can give up some yards if you can be tough in the red zone. But like that's where I think the negative plays get into it because like Penn State didn't have anything that they could go to that could really create a lot of yards in a hurry. And Drew Alar was able to hurt him with his legs. That's something I do think Ohio State you probably have a question about is
Yeah.
how they're going to do a better job dealing with because these aren't mobile
Yeah,
quarterbacks and
I mean,
Dylan
Drew
Raiola
and, and Dylan Raiola, they're not like Michael Vick back there.
and they both got hurt. It's like again, so that's certainly something I'll be looking at. And to me, that's just the defensive line. Like they got to get to their next gear. They need to get the quarterback on the ground. I think that's probably been the most disappointing part of this Ohio State season, frankly, in my mind, is their inability to get home with those front four. Because you look, they're too good of players. Like Jack Sawyer, those two defensive tackles, I think are hammers. They're playing really well in the run game. Those two, I think, need to get home a little bit more,
Yeah.
do a little bit better job in the pass rush. But
You said it best. Like that defensive line they're hammers against the run. Like they just stack and shed blocks like the best of them. You want to see them again create those negative plays that change football games. That's to me like the last step for Ohio State. I thought Caleb Downs, as usual, was really good. Defensive backs won the day, and that over the last 2 weeks, like kind of became a question mark. And I think there was never that conversation about they don't have the guys to be good. Like we know Igbinosin and Denzel Burke are two of the best boundary cornerbacks in the country. They just had to play a little bit better. Penn State's probably not going to test you as much as you would like, but it's nice to see both of them. I mean, you look at the leading pass catchers, it was running backs and tight ends. Like their passing attack did not go through wide receivers on Saturday. So nice to see Igbinosin and Denzel Burke play some good football games. Dill, that's where I'll probably round it out. I think my biggest takeaway is this Ohio State team is one. I think it's obviously very talented. I think there's another gear for this Ohio State team to reach. But then in the same conversation, you look across the country and say, like outside of Oregon, who you went on the road and played a very competitive football game with, certainly can win that game, neutral site, college football playoff game, Big Ten championship game. My biggest takeaway is this Ohio State team is the second best team in the country. I don't think it's that close because you look at the other teams at the top of the sport, Penn State, Georgia, a lot of question marks. Ohio State answers some.
Frankly, Penn State might be like right around number 3 because
I don't think Penn State should drop. I think Ohio
really,
State
really good football team.
Yeah, I think we'll do our rankings later today. I think Ohio State should move to 2. Penn State should stay at 3. Georgia should go back to 4. I mean, they played a game that went into the fourth quarter with a walk-on quarterback that Florida had to play for a majority of that football game. Like Ohio State has asserted themselves as the second best team in the country, and I think Penn State's still a damn good football team as well. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.